Hey, Blue Table fans. I thought maybe you didn't get enough of my beautiful face. I will probably turn off the comments section for this one. Now, all right. So I'm going to talk about 3D printing and the miniatures battles business. First off, I present myself as an expert because I've been around so long and I've been doing it so long. And I'd say I've had about 70% success, 30% failure. All right, first off, I started with miniatures battles. Yeah, by the way, I'm going to ramble for a long time. I started off in the miniatures battles business in the late 90s, 97. I bought, some friends of mine brought some White Dwarf magazines to a role-playing game that I was running, and I just started and it was incidental. They didn't bring them for me. They just, by the way, I have my 5-year-old daughter. She's looking at me. Hey. All right. She's just looking at me. Okay. And so I looked at it. I kind of saw what it was about, and it just blew my mind. Now, before that, I had actually seen a Warhammer rule book at a friend of mine who was in a, what's that called, a writer's group, like a creative writing group. Loved that group, and that was way earlier. That was like in the early 90s. So I think it was Warhammer First Edition, like Warhammer Fantasy. And all right, so anyway, my first army was Eldar, and I bought some metal Eldar for $1 each. This guy had 54 of them, and I scrubbed them with acetone, and I enamel spray painted them as a base because I thought that would look like black armor. What a mistake. Now, flash forward to just this year. That first Eldar army I painted, I could never remember what I did with it. But I caught up with an old high school friend of mine, and he said that I had sold it to him in like '99, or maybe even earlier. And he just sent it back to me. So I'm going to be doing a video on that soon with this army, the very first army that I painted in '97. It's a total mind trip to get open this package with this army in it. I'm like, and some of them I don't remember painting. Some of them I very much do remember painting them. And then there's some models for that army where I don't know where they went. I knew I painted some swooping hawks for them because I remember I was trying to paint the wings. By the way, as a rainbow, every feather like transitioning. It was called Craft World Skittles. By the way, I already know I've told you guys this story before, but I'll flesh in some other things. So I was in the living room one day, and I was about to just throw this model right through the bay window. And my young wife comes in, and she's like, "Sean, don't you do it. Don't do it." We must have been like 28 years old at the time. Babies, little did we know how our life would turn out. And overall, very good, by the way. So at the time, it was the local game shop didn't carry any Games Workshop stuff. There were no shops that carried Games Workshop stuff. They just ordered it in. You had to special order it. So I'm naturally a treehouse builder, like the kid that gets all the other kids to build a treehouse or dam up the ditch or do whatever. And so I started having a Warhammer group at my house, and it was growing and growing. At first, it was just me and like 2 or 3 or 4 other guys, right? The first table I built was actually I built it out of plywood. And it had fine grit pebbles in it, so you could make the hills literally like a sandbox. And I had like literally rocks and stuff that I put in, and fake trees that I would stick in, and that would make that was my genius idea. Like, instead of making hills, why not just have sand? That thing was terrible. And so anyways, you had to order through the local shop. And so what I would do is I would get everybody's order, and we would order them, and then they would come in. And a blister of 2 metal models was like, I think $5 or $7. It wasn't less than $5. It certainly wasn't more than $7. Hi, do you need to get through? No. Okay, great. All right, so, oh man. So one day, so this is what's happening. And so the game shop owner, he's doing no work. He just has the account. And I was like, wait a second. Why am I not getting a little piece of the pie? Because I'm like organizing, I'm hosting the thing at my house, right? And it kept growing. It grew to be, I think, about 15 people. So one day, my wife gets home from work, and there are so many guys. I'm going to estimate at least 13 guys over at my house. And there are Warhammer tables in every single room. I do believe for Warhammer Fantasy at this time, because we started with 40K. It was me, Eldar, a friend of mine that played Space Marines. He had pea green Space Marines, and another guy with orcs, all primary colors. And he was a great painter, by the way. And okay, don't do that. Just come on, leave your father be. Okay. And she comes home, there's all these guys, and there's like Taco Bell wrappers like shoved under the couch. You know, she's kind of pulling, she sees them, she's kind of pulling them out. And she's tired, and she's like, listen, I'm going to go change and, you know, just get ready for bed. She goes into our bedroom. What does she find? 2 guys with a plywood gaming table on top of our bed playing Warhammer. And that was the last straw. She was like, Sean, this has got to change. You got to figure out a better way. So I call up Games Workshop. Yeah, this is eventually leading to 3D printing and stuff. This is a great context. So she calls up. Okay, so I'm like, okay. First off, I should be the one maybe making the money off of all these special order Games Workshop models. So I call up Games Workshop. I'm like, I'd like an account. And they start talking to me. Again, this is probably in '98. And they start talking to me, and they want to know where my shop is located. I'm like, well, I don't have a shop. I just host it at my place. I got all these guys. We got good orders coming in. I'll be making the orders. And they were like, yeah, you got to have a physical location. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. I'll call you back. But yes, there were still those types of fun. Still had a landline at the time. So then I started looking around town, and little did I know what I was about to do would kind of inform my entire life. And so I started looking around town. By the way, this is in Medford, Oregon. I grew up in Ashland, Oregon, southernmost town. Go up about 10 minutes, up I-5, and you're in Medford, which is a slightly larger town in the old Rogue Valley. All right. So I start looking for places. I don't find very many good ones, right? And except one, I find this place, and it's awesome. It's on the 2nd story. It's on Main Street. It's on the 2nd story. It has this wraparound balcony around it. And hey, skedaddles. And inside it has a common bathroom, which is taken care of by the facility. And it has this really awesome gaming area. It's like one big open area. And I'm like, this is awesome. But what is the rent? I want you to think of a number. It's double what you pay for your rent or your mortgage. That's the person. It was double. We paid $425 a month. Yeah, that's how bad the integrity of the dollar has been wrecked in that time, that everything has effectively gone up 5 times as much. All right, well, maybe not exactly. We can talk about that another day. But prices have still gone up. I believe the main cause is the increase of the money supply. Not great. And so anyway, we paid $425 a month. The rent at this place, utilities included, was $850. So this was the pitch I had. I'm like, all right, Sean, you've got to have an evil master plan. You've got to figure out a way to make this work. So what I did is I called my gaming group, again, on the landline, called all these guys down, and I brought it. I'm like, just don't ask questions, just come to this place. The landlord gave me the key so I could have this little meeting there. And what was it? So they show up. I remember distinctly there were 13 people. I was like, guys, wouldn't it be great if we all had a key to this place and could come here 24/7 any old time? We'll build some lockers to hold your stuff in. And not only that, but you'll get a wholesale account, because you'll be able to buy your stuff discounted through this account that I'm going to get with Games Workshop. And that was a great sell. It worked out within like 3 days. I had among the greater group, I had like, I think 10 to 13 guys ready to pay me the princely sum of $50 a month to pitch in for this place and have it. And that I would start like a little game store in it, and the name Invincible War Games was born. All right, what next? Okay, so this was about the time that Necromunda came out. I remember that very distinctly. And quite frankly, this was not a good time for wargaming. The models were not great. They were still mostly metal. And like Games Workshop was just like, hey, look at these new thing we're doing. We're doing plastics. And it's, okay. So that was the birth of Invincible War Games. And then what happened is I ended up going across the street for 4,000 square feet. Are you ready for this? For $500 a month. And it was above a bar. By the way, a disgusting old barfly bar. You know what I'm talking about. Like, it actually had like a smell to it of like alcohol, dust, and despair. You know this smell possibly. All right, so big square, second story, old building. The downside, it was a dump. It had to be completely cleaned up and renovated. Sound familiar? And so we put in new carpet. One of the guys, and by the way, my little club was burgeoning by this time. Like maybe 40 people involved in one way or another, even just as patrons. And this place was awesome. And at the bottom, when it had to be repainted too, one of the club members loaned me the money, but I got no bank loans, by the way. It was all a tree. Yeah, we built a tree house. He loaned me the money to get the carpet. I think it was like $900. Again, that was like a lot of money for me. And so we had to repaint. The front door was this really tall old door. And it was a little wider than a regular single door, but it was bisected in the middle. So you would like open it like a little cupboard almost. And I painted it royal blue. And then you'd go up these steps and you'd be in my little wonderland. And it was great. I painted my miniatures. People came in all day. We had like couches and stuff laid out. I wish I had taken, somewhere I have video of this place. Probably in my ex-wife's storage unit. Oh, I should try and find it. Wouldn't that be mind-blowing? I remember sitting on the steps and making a video about what my plans were with the place. Totally biting off more than I could chew. A bigger vision than really could happen given the resources. And oh, by the way, all this time I was going to college. My hours were 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. This is more like a story about my old game shop. Well, I may as well finish this one too. I can go as long as I want. I think I have an hour on this tape, maybe 2. How you doing? Okay, non-committal wave. Hey, are you sure? Do you want to get through here? Do you want me to wrap this up and come spend time with you guys? Oh, that's a big yes from the Weifel unit. All right, let me finish the story of my... I'm going to finish the story of my old game shop. Yeah, she says okay. All right, cool. So, still had memberships. I got a lot of great stories from this epoch. Among them are the vampires would come there. We had a huge Vampire the Masquerade crowd. Absolutely enormous. Totally into live action role playing. In the wintertime, when they couldn't go downtown to the plaza, they would converge on my place once a week. And it was like this old, creepy, like the back rooms were all these old, super creepy Victorian style things with huge ceilings and some of the original drapes. I mean, it was super, super thematic. And the other thing is I had a homeless guy. I had a vet. He occupied one of the side rooms. He made it totally into his own place, and so I guess he wasn't homeless after that. And he locked it up, and he was my security and help in exchange for the room. And I remember asking him, like, "Hey, we should set you up and get you your own place." Like, "Sean, I spend my whole day in the park. I don't have any problems or worries. I'm doing great." And one day, there was a couple days, I guess it was like a time when I wasn't there that much, just a couple days, we ran out of toilet paper, and he was using paper towels, and he clogged up the toilets, and there was an escape hatch on ground level that opened up, and all those brown trout got barfed up into the back parking lot. And the landlord, also the owner of the Barfly Bar, that's where his patrons would park, and he came up, he was steaming. He wanted me to go take care of that ASAP. So I'm like, all right, time to get on the Sunshine Yellows and go take care of it. And I found out how many friends I had that day. One guy came down. Everyone else made themselves scarce. Of course, you can't expect your patrons to pick up human feces. So I went and took care of that, hosed it all down. And that was quite a story. Another night, I was working late. It was raining, and I go to the back place, and I see a guy, like last patron out of the Barfly Bar. He comes out, and he's in a wheelchair, and he tipped over trying to get into his own car. And so I go down in the rain, and I help him up. And I'm like, "Sir, are you okay? What can I do for you? Can I drive you home?" And the next morning, I get him situated. The next morning, I come out. He's still in his car. He's still out there. I'm like, ugh, did he die? And so I go down there, and it turns out he thought I was in his drunken haze, he thought I was a police officer. Because at the time, I was a young, clean-shorn Mormon type. And I was calling him sir and everything. Yeah, he thought I was a police officer, and he didn't want to drive home inebriated. So there you go. Maybe something good came of that somehow. And so those are 3 quick stories of my second story, 4,000 square foot, big square, renovated place for a game shop. And then I think the owner was going to sell it. Something happened. And it was time to move on. And then I moved to my 3rd and final location, which was awesome. I still it's a dream location in my dreams. I'll tell you more about that later. And then, of course, I got a job as a teacher and moved to San Francisco Bay Area. 4 years later, I had started Blue Table Painting in my garage in California. All right, so just getting back a little bit to the 3D printing thing is, during that time, a couple of things happened that stuck in my head. One, when I was still in Medford, I'd say the year 2000, a white dwarf came out, and it talked about somebody who was making copies of their Space Marine bikes and selling them. And that they went in and contacted the Canadian authorities and they shut this person down. And in the article they said, we put a lot of effort to make this intellectual property, and we think that if someone else wants to do their own thing, they should go do that and not just take our ideas and make it and go make money off of it. And at the time, that's kind of was where the industry was. It was like, well, maybe some education needed to happen, that it was like, well, you probably shouldn't copy all these things. Not too long after that, I was attempting, in my garage in California, I was attempting to make vulcanized molds for Sisters of Battle. And just to make my own, I was like, well, could I make them for not $4 a figure, but maybe $1 or $2 a figure? And by the way, that went absolutely nowhere. I got 0 casts to come out right. They were terabad. And I was like, oh, okay, well, you know, I just sort of let it go. But there's always this thing where it's like, if it's just, people just sort of like, well, whatever's easier, whatever's less expensive, as long as you can sort of keep under that, then the vast majority of people will just sort of still go for your thing. And I guess going into the world of 3D printing, you know what, I'm going to finish my thoughts on 3D printing. We'll call this a wrap. All right, still only mildly irritated. All right, so first off, 3D printing it's still in its infancy. We haven't seen the most amazing things happen yet with 3D printing. It's going to get better and better. Do you remember the old dot matrix printers? Eat from the 80s? That's where 3D printing is right now. That's what you still see the lines in some of them. Ugh, that's terrible. It's like, you got to watch out for that. But it's already amazing. And I'm going on Etsy and I'm losing my mind. But the prices are not less than what Games Workshop gets in its kits. And Games Workshop really is a little bit of a premium company. Like, you go into other companies are doing it typically for less. Not always. I don't think any are really doing it for more. Infinity is at about $10 a figure. But of course you don't need as many figures to play the game. Bit of a boutique company, that. And then you've got War Machine. War Machine actually, I don't think was less expensive than Games Workshop. You'd buy a set of 10 infantry for $50 or $60. And that's kind of where Games Workshop is now. And that like surprises. I'm just like, oh, oof. That is like brutal. And since I'm in the industry, like people are like, hey Sean, paint this army for me. Oh, by the way, acquire and assemble the models. So I have my finger on the pulse of how much those models cost. I'm constantly updating spreadsheets with the new prices off of the Games Workshop site. And I see them, they're bumping them up. They're bumping them up. Sometimes they'll go down. Usually when they're trying to get a game like going again, like Age of Sigmar went way down for a little while. And then they start bumping them up. A Tree Man, I think recently went from 61 to 65. And I don't think they'll ever stop that bump. They'll keep bumping it up, bumping it up, bumping it up. But of course, as a side note, I'm in the camp of keeping my eye on the money supply. Like in the US, we just added $4 trillion in like less than a year. Dump. And I'm like, ooh, yeah, prices for things are probably going to go up. Because there's actors that are keeping their eye on these things and they got to protect themselves from the after effects of that. Please, guys, don't get into arguments over this. Just, if my idea is dumb, just discount it. So, but in any case, those prices are getting bumped up. And again, please, don't go off on this in the comments. If for no other reason, that you'll be boring. because this has already been just whipped to death. Like, that dead horse is just bones, and the bones have been reduced to powder. And now there's just like a stain where the horse used to be. Just stop whipping it. And for the record, I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying I don't think those prices are going to stop going up until something happens, till there's actually like a bump to it. And that's not a boycott. Come on. There's been so many times, and everybody comes crawling back. You know why? Because Games Workshop is making great models, and their prices apparently aren't that bad. Oh boy, I really stirred it up, didn't I? Well, I'll probably still keep the comments on anyway. All right, let's continue. Coming up on half an hour. That was only context for 3D printing. So I'm going on Etsy, I'm seeing these really cool sets, and I'm like, oh, right now they're at about the same as Games Workshop, probably less. Like that Trilogira figure that I got recently. Thank you, what a treat for Daddy. If you bought that from Forge World, I bought it, I think it was like $48, including everything. I think if you bought it from Forge World, like the same thing, resin cast, it would have probably been between $110 and $160. So it would have been more. And of course, that's where you get into IP, where if you have that intellectual property and you can keep a lid on it, or at the very least make it more convenient to just get it through a legitimate source, then you can keep those prices up. And there's advantages to that too, that the prices can't, like Forge World creates new and amazing things. But once you get to a different, the 3D printing thing is a completely different dynamic. You have people that are only making the STL files and the supports, hopefully, and you can get those pretty cheaply because they're on a subscription model. You subscribe to the thing, every month you get new STL files. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 3D printers, and you just print to your heart's content. And isn't that lovely? But those STL files are really cheap. So you've broken the what's it called? The business model, or how the industry works with that. Because then you go on, like the Trilogira, I went on, there's like 12 shops. And these are all just regular people doing it out of their houses. Man, that's guerrilla warfare. That's crazy. And the prices are all over the place. I was looking for this one figure, and there was a guy doing it for, and I'm going to include shipping in all of this. Like there's a net cost. It was $28, and then there was another shop doing it for like $90. And the prices are like all over the place. So the $20 shop guy, I contacted him, and I'm like, hey, is this model you're selling really this large? And he's like, oh, yeah, it is. I didn't realize how big that was. I've probably underpriced it. He's like, but I'll still do it for the $20. I'm like, yeah, I'd rather be fair. Just make your change, let me know, and then I'll go to your shop and I'll pick it up. And he still came in lower than all the other places. And but in any case, to me that's like super interesting. And even for 40K, there's whole alternate ranges. So just to get to the significance of this, and maybe I'm just the dummy that is finally like picking up on it. Like it's like, yeah, duh, Sean, this has been going on for several years now. Is that it used to be the big thing to making a miniatures game.
Can you go pee?
Oh, yeah, go, come on through. Hi, sorry about this, I didn't know when you would be back.
Be careful with the camera.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to go ahead and just scooch this way. All right, so you've got... So in the olden days, to get a miniatures battles game off the ground, it was a huge liftoff. Like, I watched War Machine, I think it came out in 2001. They had 4 basic battle boxes, each with 3, 4, 5, 6 figures in them. And that was it. That was the game. I remember playing it out of those boxes and being just stunned by how great this game is. So first off, the best games aren't the ones always that are successful. I don't know what the factors are. I'd love to hear from you about it. Again, please, please, I'm begging you, don't go off wailing about Games Workshop. We've heard it. We've already heard it. Don't be boring. All right, so what happens is if you get factions for your game, to make a game completely viable, you need at least 20 or 30 unit entries per faction, and you're going to need at least 10 factions, minimum. There was a time when I was looking at Warhammer Fantasy, and I was realizing they had 30 or 40 entries per faction, and they had about 20 different factions. And that's if you're a game shop owner, that's a big lot of models to buy. I mean, it's crazy. I think the game shop of the future is the 3D printers are going to be actually literally in the game shop. You'll just pick up tags, you'll put them in a slot, and 10 minutes later everything will be printed out. And that's how fast these printers are going to go. Like the old dot matrix printers, we had and 30 to 60 minutes, seconds later, one page would come out. Now, of course, like John, and in color, could be even photorealistic. The printers have gotten insane. So you'll have shops like that because ultimately the print-on-demand thing will get rid of the inefficiencies of the old model of creating it, promoting it, building it up, casting the models, packaging the models, and then finally getting it to the marketplace and hoping it's successful. And there's just so much waste in that model. To go in and literally like have it done, oh man. And what will happen is, and this is another technology prediction of mine, is that cryptocurrency is coming. And there ain't no stopping it, and it's going to change how things work. Once some of the problems with it are, oh thank you, aren't you a sweetheart? Look at her. Oh. All right, I'm almost done. All right, I'm getting the thumbs up. Okay, so listen, my new lovely wife is so amazing that I'm like Johnny on the spot to please her. I just doing everything I can to be the best husband that I possibly can. And that behooves me in any type of relationship, especially if I'm living with that person. How pleasant can I be? How pleasant of an experience can I provide for this other person who has to see me every day? Okay, so anyway, the game shop of the future will be maybe in the back room. There'll just be a bunch of printers, and it'll all be cleaned up, and you'll just get your model. You'll have a whole army printed off. Oh, and when they're starting to do it in color, what will